What is up? New Year's Eve. We are under 5 hours away from 2014. A terrific year in sports. I'm Noah Taborda, and unfortunately my co-host Blake Devine is currently, he went to Oregon today, so on a vacation. Hard for him to be here. He wishes he could be here. He is with us in our minds, but and hearts, but not here in person right now. But nonetheless, I have a great show for you tonight. We are going to start with the caller information. The number to call, as always, 224-563-8444. Again, that is 224-563-8444. That's 3 4s at the end. Of course, you can contact us at Twitter at Blake and Noah. That is at capital BLAKE underscore and underscore capital NOAH. Or like our Facebook page, just like our show. That is Blake and Noah, LA to Chicago. We are up to, I believe, 106 likes. So over the past 2 weeks, up 8 likes. We started out with like a bunch at a time, but slowly still growing. So it is great. Keep liking it up. We appreciate the support. So with that, we are going to get started, and we are going to start in the NFL. And before we get into previewing the playoffs and looking at drafts ahead for the 20 teams that unfortunately were unable to make the playoffs, we are going to start with some of the headlines around the NFL. Peyton Manning, in case you hadn't heard, broke the passing record set by Drew Brees. But then came the controversy. NFL decided to go back and review whether or not Peyton Manning's pass went backwards. Because if the throw was back, then it would not count as a pass, and the passing yardage would go down, and he would finish 7 short of Drew Brees. But instead, he was given 5,477, and that is one more than Drew Brees' record. So a great mark for him. Luckily, they held it up. It's terrific for Peyton Manning, becoming the first quarterback since Dan Marino in 1984 to break both records. The other quarterbacks to do that, Cecil Isbell of the Packers in 1942, and then exactly 1 year later, Sid Luckman would do the same. So, congratulations to Peyton Manning. I think the greatest year of any quarterback in history, and continuing to cement his legacy, continuing to make sure that he is a Hall of Famer and maybe the greatest quarterback of all time. We'll just have to wait and see how the rest of his career goes. Now on to a team that isn't doing so well, and a player that really had a down year, Maurice Jones-Drew of the Jacksonville Jaguars. A couple of years ago, he was the talk of the town, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Just massive, unstoppable. But this year, just a terrible year. Only ran for 803 yards, a career worst. 5 rushing touchdowns, tied for the worst. His reception yards was the worst, and his reception touchdowns, which were 0, his worst in his career as well. I mean, I have nothing better to say. Just an awful season for Maurice Jones-Drew. And you know what? He wants a different place to play. He just doesn't like the fit right now. And he has decided to test the market. And most likely, that will mean that the Jaguars will have to draft a running back. To let you guys know, I am doing a mock draft right now. A 7-rounder. It is hard. It's taken a while, but I am almost done. And just in case you guys are wondering, so who do you think is going to replace him? Well, you know what? It was hard. They can't go with a guy in the second round, especially because of how early they are picking. So I see them going in the third round, and with that pick, I see them going with one of my favorite college running backs, Carlos Hyde of Ohio State, my favorite Ohio State Buckeyes. A massive guy. You know what? He reminds me of an Eddie Lacy, of Frank Gore, a big guy you can power through. I think he's a bigger guy than Maurice Jones-Drew. I think the Jags will like him, especially if they can revamp that offense. I believe they have around 9 or 10 picks in this year's draft, so they definitely have the amount needed to really make a difference on their team. So, MJD leaving, or will he stay? We're not sure yet, but all signs point to he is about to exit Jacksonville. So, the playoffs, we are going to ease into that. But first, before we do that, Lambeau Field, where the playoffs will be, well, there are 11,000 tickets still remaining for the stadium. The Packers have 319 consecutive sellouts. That's 301 regular season games and 18 playoff games. And nearly 100,000 people on their season ticket waiting list. But no, not everybody wants to go. There are still 11,000 seats that are open. So, if you live in Green Bay, you might want to inquire because there are still a lot of spaces, lots of spaces for people to go. So, either way, I do expect it to get sold out. It's very unlikely. Still, we have until Sunday for this, but unusual for the Packers. Now, with that, we are moving on to the coaches that were fired in the NFL. First off, I know Jake Liker, with a passion, dislikes Greg Schiano. He was fired. Another coach that was fired, Mike Shanahan of the Washington Redskins. A lot of people saw this coming, the benching of RG3, lots of stuff happened with them. Jason Garrett, not fired. Mike Munchak not fired. Dennis Allen, but they are all on the hot seat. Jim Schwartz was fired after going 7-9 for the Detroit Lions. As I said, Schiano and Shanahan, Leslie Frazier of the Vikings, and Rob Chudzinski of the Browns after only 1 year. So, is your favorite team's coach on the hot seat? Well, we don't know. It's been a crazy offseason for coaching firings, but it's going to be tough to replace these coaches. It's going to be tough to find good coaches right now. Houston obviously fired Gary Kubiak as well, and they are looking at Penn State's head coach. And, there are some great coaches in the NFL, but this really goes to show you how difficult it is to find a good coach. The Browns going to be on their third coach in 3 years. So it is tough to find that right match for your team. More news. The New York Jets obviously don't have enough faith in Geno Smith despite his improvements over the year. They will eye a QB in the draft. So, for Geno, he's going to have to keep improving. He's going to have to earn his spot next year, possibly. Also, the Vikings GM, so the QB mess is on him. So he is accepting the real big problems. Lots of people think they will go after a QB, possibly Blake Bortles, possibly Derek Carr, or even Johnny Manziel, who is playing right now. With that, we are going to move on to our predictions in the NFL. So, after Week 17, we ended up with some great wild card matchups, insane finishes, including the Packers over the Bears on their crazy heave to Randall Cobb, Rodgers with the magic. And they will play against the 49ers on Sunday. The other Sunday game being the Bengals and the Chargers. The Chargers, coming back from a horrible year last year, they will take on the Bengals, who were 11-5 and played well. Chargers led by Phillip Rivers. The Bengals led by a mixture of, Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, Giovanni Bernard, and Benjarvis Green-Ellis. The Saturday games, my favorite of all, Chiefs, Colts. That will be a terrific game to watch. And then, Saints against Eagles. Definitely going to be a high-scoring game. So, we are going to start with the Chiefs and the Colts. These two teams played a couple weeks back, and that game saw the Colts come away victorious by the score of 23-7. In that game, Kansas City did not play up to par. Andrew Luck, 241 yards and a touchdown. Their only score by the Chiefs was in the first quarter by Jamal Charles. You look at the stats in that game, Jamal Charles finishes with 106 yards and one touchdown only. Unable to do much, not the same game you expect. 100 yards, you say, well, that's great, but they really did limit him. Alex Smith was awful. 153 yards and an interception. That was it. A QBR of 11.1. On the Indianapolis side, Donald Brown was 79 yards and a touchdown. He also had 31 yards and a touchdown receiving, so Donald Brown was the big difference maker in this game. The turnover ratio, KC with 4 turnovers. You want to know how many fumbles? Alex Smith lost 2 fumbles. Niles Davis lost a fumble. Fumbles everywhere for this team. The turnovers were costly. Indy with no turnovers. So, when we're analyzing this game, a lot of it's going to come down to turnovers. And personally, I think Indy will be fresher on their feet. You know, last week, a lot of teams rested the players, of course. And KC was one of those teams. Indy was not. Against the Jaguars team, they played their players. I think they will come in fresher, ready to go. But despite that, I'm going to pick the Chiefs in this one. You know, it's going to be tough. I think the Colts have the ability to win, but I think the Chiefs are going to come away with this one. I don't think they're going to have the same turnovers. I think Jamal Charles is going to come to play. It will be close. It will be exciting, but the Chiefs have the edge. I just like Jamal Charles over this Colts defense, and I think they're going to force Andrew Luck to make some mistakes, and for the second straight year, the Colts will go home with a wild card loss. Chiefs moving on, and now we're going to go to San Diego, Cincinnati. Chiefs now would be playing, we won't know who they're playing until the end of the Chargers-Bengals game. So, Chargers-Bengals. This one, you know what, for me, it's not that big of a difference. I think Bengals are just a significantly better team. I just don't see the Chargers coming away with this one. I love Phillip Rivers. I love what they've done with this team, led by Ryan Matthews, of course, having a phenomenal year, a 1,200-yard rushing year. Phenomenal year for him. Phenomenal year for this Chargers team that was one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. But the Bengals have a better defense. They've got a budding quarterback in Andy Dalton. I don't see how they can lose this game. They're playing at home. You know, they only allow 19 points a game. And Giovanni Bernard has been a dynamic player. I see this team coming out and just, you know, kind of almost running over them. You know, they played on December 1st of this year. Cincinnati won 17-10. But this is the playoffs. I think it's different. Bengals have gone home a couple of years without making it through. And this year, I see them getting through the first round. So, the Bengals at 11-5. The Chiefs also getting through. So, the Bengals currently would be playing. Fortunately, I can't seem to. The computer had a weird glitch. Slowed down for a second. So, the Chiefs will be playing against, I believe, the Denver Broncos. Yes, they will be playing the Denver Broncos, setting up another AFC West showdown. Meanwhile, the Bengals will take on New England. And now, we go to the NFC. San Francisco versus Green Bay. Ooh, what a matchup. Again, for the fourth time in a couple of years, they are going to be looking for finally the Packers will try to be getting a win. They haven't been able to do it all. And this year, Green Bay is your lucky year. Aaron Rodgers, Eddie Lacy complete this beautiful tandem. Rodgers is an insanely good quarterback, and the magic is with him this year, in my opinion. So I am going with the Green Bay Packers. I think both teams are phenomenal. I think the 49ers, personally, are a better team right now. But I think that come this game, Aaron Rodgers will work his magic and get the win. They have come so close in the past couple of games. It is time. I expect a very, very tight game. It'll come down to the wire, and in the end, it'll come down to who converts on their opportunities. I think Green Bay, with the magic of Rodgers, will convert one more time, probably, than the Niners. So, they would be the fourth seed heading. So, if Philadelphia wins, they will be headed to Seattle. If New Orleans wins, they will be headed to Carolina. But I don't see Philadelphia coming out of this game at all. I don't think they have what it takes. Nick Foles, a young quarterback, never played in the playoffs. Drew Brees, a seasoned veteran. And because of that, we will see the New Orleans Saints, led by Drew Brees, march on into Seattle with a shot